Thank you, Chair. We're live on YouTube and the meeting's being recorded, so I'll hand over to you to start the meeting.
Good evening and welcome to East Devon's District Virtual Consultative Scrutiny Meeting on the 1st of February 2024. I'm your Chair, Councillor Mike Goodman. I would like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. This meeting has been held remotely on a consultative basis, but we will continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our Constitution. The meeting can be viewed live online and will be recorded. Please bear this in mind throughout the evening. Therefore, may I remind colleagues to be careful with their language and that the code of conduct applies throughout our meeting. We reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please can I ask you to turn off your telephone devices or to silent. As this consultative scrutiny meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply in the event of a breakdown in the interconnection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on your website for details. Please make sure all your microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made and do not interrupt people. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. And members of the public who want to view the agenda can also do so by visiting our website, www.eastdevon.gov.uk. I would now like to welcome Alan Burrows to the meeting. Mr. Burrows is Director of External Liaison for South West Water. Thank you very much for attending this evening. Also welcome to Mark Wilsford, Director of Asset Management and Hazel Tranchant, Senior Asset Manager, and Sarah Sharp, Community Engagement Officer from South West Water, who will be supporting Mr. Burrows. Before we start the meeting, the committee needs to appoint, in case they experience a problem. And my understanding is Councillor Kemp is with us. So Councillor Kemp will be the Vice Chair. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone? And when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Sarah Jenkins, to do a roll call, please, of committee members.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barlow.
Present.
Councillor Jenny Brown.
Got it. Present.
Thank you, Councillor Cahill. No, Councillor Chapman. No, Councillor Bethany Collins.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy Collins. No, Councillor Goodman.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Anne Hall.
Present.
Councillor Heath.
Present.
Councillor Johns.
Present, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinder.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Toy.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Wibley.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. The meeting is quorate, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 1 then is any apologies?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Cahill.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. Bearing in mind the code of conduct, please raise your electronic hand if you have any declaration. When your name is called, please state your declaration and state what exactly the interest is and the type of declaration, please. It is noted that all councillors have an equal interest as we're customers of South West Water. Sarah, to do the call of names, please.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Barlow, any interest to declare, please?
I'm a member of Sidmouth Town Council, and Sidmouth has been mentioned in this.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Brown. Councillor Brown, do you have
No.
any interests? No, thank you. Councillor Bethany Collins.
No, nothing to declare.
Thank you. And Councillor Roy Collins.
It's not here.
Oh, sorry.
He is in the meeting. He's
Oh,
muted currently. He's on the
come back
second
to Councillor
page.
Collins. Okay, thank you. Councillor Goodman.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
I may do if there is anything concerned with beer and West Seaton.
Thank you. Councillor Johns.
Nothing, thank you, Sarah.
Councillor Kemp.
Nothing, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor McKinder.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Nothing.
Thank you. Councillor Toy.
None other than that I'm a member of the Exmouth Town Council.
Thank you. And Councillor Wibley.
Similarly, nothing other than Exmouth Town Council member.
Thank you. And are there any other councillors in the room who need to declare an interest, please? No, I see no other hands, so back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, confidential. Pardon? Councillor Barrett?
Councillor Howe's got his hand up.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, well, it's declarations of interest. Obviously, I'm a resident, a parish councillor of Cliff St Mary, and I do own a share in South West Water, so I can possibly speak at their shareholder meeting. But I don't believe it incurs me any wrath, if you get my meaning.
Thank you. Okay, so I will repeat that. Agenda item 4, confidential and exempt items. There are no confidential exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way. Going on to item 5, decisions made by Cabinet, including portfolio holders called in by members of scrutiny in accordance with the overview and scrutiny procedures. There are none. And my understanding, there are no public speakers. So we will now go on to the main item then, which is agenda item 7, a report from South West Water. Now, you've had answers from Mr. Alan Burrows for questions that were put to him. Now, Mr. Burrows, can I invite you now to both go through those questions, but also do a presentation on updating us on where you are with all the issues and opportunities to improve South West Water. And we do understand that this is a question that many people will want to be asking tonight on how you're getting on with the improvements. And if you could start by answering those questions, then going on to a general presentation of where you are. And then what we'll do then is after you've finished, I'll then invite members to ask questions one by one. If that's okay. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I do a quick volume check? Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, so Sarah and I exchanged a few emails this week and last week. So what I think the best thing for myself and my colleagues to do first is to go through the questions 1 to 12 and to give people the opportunity just to seek some clarification, because in some instances we've had to interpret the question in the way that we believe it's being asked and we may not have interpreted it correctly. So if there is a misunderstanding, apologies, but it gives us an opportunity to expand on that and correct that as necessary. So if that's okay with you, Chair, I'll proceed with question 1. So in question 1, you asked, you mentioned that there were 10 non-permitted spills from South West Water affecting bathing beaches in East Devon. We've interpreted that question as there were 10 pollution incident reports issued by the Environment Agency between the period of the 4th of July and the 20th of September. Those pollution incident reports that are provided by the Environment Agency do get issued by their process to the relevant contacts within East Devon and other local authorities. And those pollution incident reports related to a number of locations Budley, Sandy Bay, Seaton, and Sidmouth and Exmouth Town. That information is not our information, it's information that's held on the Environment Agency website. And if it's okay with you, Chair, I'll ask both Sarah and our Sarah to make a note, and I'll provide you a link to that website where that information is held. So we do notify the Environment Agency when something occurs. And if the Environment Agency believes that there is a risk to pollution at a beach, they will then also issue a pollution incident report tool, or PERT, and that's the information I am referring to. So that's one part of the question. The other interpretation, which isn't on the answers here, Chair, is because it was on reflection. There may also be a question over what is reportable under the shellfish requirements. So under each of the permits that we hold for storm overflow, we are required to report where it's a shellfish reportable incident. And suffice to say, there were a couple of instances where we didn't do that. And firstly, we apologise for that. And I think it would be really helpful if myself, Paul McNee, who's our environmental manager, and a couple of councillors from East Devon, actually, or officers from East Devon, sat down for half an hour to an hour just to go through the process that we need to go through in order that you've got the relevant information that is required. So I'm going to pause, Chair, after each question, because else we'll have to go back through the 12 questions in a minute. So if it's okay with you, is it okay to seek clarification on that?
Yes, thank you. Have we got, I didn't put these questions together. Have we got the officer that did put the question, I think it was Matthew. Is he with us, Sarah? That he could perhaps
yes, he is, Chair. Yes.
So Matthew, could I just invite you to just comment on whether you're happy with what has been said, and also the offer to meet with Alan at a later date and to keep those communications going? Is Matthew gonna?
Sorry, Chair.
Oh,
Just
no.
getting my microphone open. Beg your pardon. Right. So in terms of the offer, very much interested to have a chat. I cover the environment health team, and we cover the shellfish hygiene and the beds and what have you. So we would be very interested in terms of meeting up to discuss that we do actually get the information at the appropriate time and in the appropriate format. So yeah, very much open to that. I think in terms of the pollution is to report to, and this is a particular issue for my colleague Peter Blythe on the beaches. And whilst we appreciate that the Environment Agency do have the role and responsibility of producing the PERTs, it would be helpful to actually have prior notification from South West Water. And what we find, there has been a bit of an inconsistency with that, because we have a number of different hats on when we're dealing with sewage overflow. So we have the shellfish, we also have our beach management responsibilities as well. And what we find is that sometimes by the time it's got to the Environment Agency and then got to us, the time has kind of passed. So we could have taken quicker action if we'd had an early response. Now I realise that's not a legal formal requirement, but it would be something that would make our lives a lot easier in terms of managing the beaches if we had earlier sight of those incidents. So whilst I appreciate that there is a requirement on the EA to do that, actually in terms of working together and working in a sort of atmosphere of cooperation, that early notification direct from South West Water would be incredibly helpful, and would also help to protect the use of our beaches as well.
I think personally, I think we'd all echo that and agree with that. Is that something you're happy with, Alan?
I think we need to be clear about what our relative roles and responsibilities are. And I do understand frustration, Matthew, and I know it's quite a complex area. I mean, we are required under regulations through our permits, if an instance occurs that has a requirement for us to report under the shellfish notification, we are obliged to do that, and we're required to report to the relevant Port Health Authority or the relevant health authority within the local authority. And it is true to say that there are a couple of instances where we failed to do that. Regarding the issue of PERTs, it's entirely within the Environment Agency's gift to decide whether or not something is a PERT or isn't. So it's not for us to give an early warning. We provide information to the Environment Agency, and then they make a decision whether or not to include it as a PERT or not. So, Matthew, I wonder whether or not we include in our conversation somebody from the EA as well, so we have all the relevant people within the room. I think the other thing to mention, Chair, as well, is we do have WaterFit Live as well, which is shows when our storm overflows have operated and where they may potentially have a risk to bathing water quality. So that's another aspect as well. That is a live system, and that goes on and off as and when things do and do not happen. So there are three aspects to this. There is, did our storm overflow operate? Yes, no. And could it have had an impact on bathing water quality? Yes, no. WaterFit Live. Did our storm overflow operate, and is it notifiable under the Shellfish Directive? Yes, no. And then did we have a operational incident that the Environment Agency believe is suitable to issue a PERT? So there's three avenues in which to explore, Chair. So I think a meeting would be helpful with Matthew or the appropriate person.
Thank you. And I'm very mindful we've got 12 questions to go through. We will need to speed up, but I'm also mindful that I ought to invite members to contribute on this particular area. There will be a lot of time for members later if there's specific issues they wish to bring up. But does any member wish, either outside or inside the committee, because I can't see you, wish to put anything to Alan on this issue?
Got a hand from Councillor McKinder to start, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McKinder.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that I hear exactly what's been said about the legal requirements to go through the Environment Agency, but I think by enabling direct communication with the District Council as well, builds a more resilient system. So if a ball is dropped because some communication link through EA is not working correctly or just not fast enough, we've got a heads up. We will know that we haven't heard it from EA, so our officers will take that into account in their reaction. But I think this builds a more resilient system. Thank you.
Councillor Barlow.
Councillor Barlow.
Thank you. What Councillor McKinder just said, exactly the same. I don't see any reason, we want to work with South West Water. I don't care what's gone on in the past. I don't care what the problems are you've had in the past. All I want to do is try and improve what we do now. And I'm sure you want to do the same. We're all trying to do the same thing, to look after our communities. And by just texting East Devon District Council at the same time that you do your legal requirement to text the Environment Agency, I don't know, the Environment Agency, I'm sure, work 24/7. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't hurt you and it wouldn't make any difference to you to do that. And as I said, we're not going to hold you to the fire against this. All we want to do is know the information. The more information we get, the better. And I think also, reading the question, 10 non-permitted spills, I know you're allowed to discharge at certain times. However, there is a limit to the amount that you're allowed to discharge. I think we're going well over that as well. So I think any discharge, just putting an extra person in there for the sake of a cost of a text would not cost anything to you. And it just makes you show you a little bit more caring than perhaps people think. And I'm not saying you're not caring, I really am not, because I have a lot of sympathy actually for South West Water and the problems you've got. However, it's a public relations exercise as well. And the more you can be transparent and open, the better it's going to be for you and for us. Thank you.
And I would add to that, if I may, Councillor, I think that is not just about spills. I think, Adam, that's generally through the whole issue of South West Water, and liaison with us and with officers, I think, can only be a positive step forward. Now, is anybody else?
Councillor Anne Hall, Chair.
Councillor Anne Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to echo what Duncan McKinder had said, but also, rather than just doing the legal bit, I think South West Water have a duty to go above and beyond that for our public. And we had an incident here in Exmouth where we had no notification and we had sickness, actually, E. coli levels shooting up through the air. And we weren't notified. We had sick people, we had sick animals. And I really do think you should hold your head up high and say, yeah, you got it wrong. We will give you an early notice. We'll let EA know as well, but we ought to be told so our Peter Blythe, our beach management officer, can do his job properly rather than get it in the neck from everyone else saying he didn't do his job. We weren't told. So I think above and beyond, just not the legal level, you should go a bit further than that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Councillor Vicky Johns, Chair.
Councillor Vicky Johns.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I understand that there's legal obligations that South West Water have, and I think we all understand that. But I also think they have a moral obligation, because water is one of those things that we can't actually be without. And as a district council, we have a lot of beaches which we're very lucky to have blue flags, etc. on. So we have lifeguards, etc., who tell us when it's not safe to go in the water because of riptides and things. But how are we supposed to advise people not to go in the water if there is a sewage spill, etc., if we're not actually advised of that ourselves? So I agree. I mean, you know, for our beach management team, I think it's imperative that they're aware if there's going to be a spillage of any sort, just to keep all of our residents and tourists, etc., safe. So if that's something that could be put in by South West Water, I think that would go a long way. And we are supposed to be all working together on this. So I do think that if that's something that could be put in place, that would be really, really helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just provide some clarity? WaterFit Live does go over and above the legal requirements. So when a spill occurs, and we believe that that is going to have an impact on bathing water quality, we issue a WaterFit Live alert, and that actually does go to a number of people at East Devon District. It does go to Peter Blythe, and it does go to environmental health at eastdevon.gov.uk. So we do send those out. That's not a legal requirement. That's over and above that requirement. And we do that because we want to notify the relevant beach managers and the local authorities of what happens. So that is already available. The legal requirement I was referring to was on some of our permits, we have a legal requirement to report to the shell fishery that there has been a pollution. And that's an issue that I think Matthew and I, or the relevant person in East Devon, just need to clarify. So we do go over and above. And it's available on our website, and we can provide a link to that.
Thank you.
Okay.
You've got Councillor Young, Chair, and then perhaps we move on to the next section and allow members to speak after.
Councillor Young.
Oh,
I
Councillor Young,
hear
we can't hear you, Jeff, but you're not showing muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was sitting on my switch. Thanks for the all the information on this. The trouble is with Water Live is that you have to open an email, and our beach safety officer is sometimes on site or in his vehicle. We need to find a better system than having to go onto an email, like a WhatsApp or something to alert the officer to then have a look at his email. But we can sort that out outside this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to just summarise a little bit, Alan, just so we move on, because I'm very mindful we've got 11 more questions to do.
Yeah, I think, Chair, we probably had a long enough conversation on that.
Yeah,
we could probably speak about that one for the next
and I think you've got
half.
the mood, I think, of everybody. They're understanding of your issues, but they want to work with you and for you to work with us to move a lot of issues on, not just this one, but many issues. So I'll move on to the next one, which I'm sure there'll be many people who will want to contribute to this one, because I know the problems it did cause you. So would you like to answer the second question? Don't need to summarise it, but you know what your response is now, really, Alan.
So I think we've got the question here is there was some disappointment over media referencing spills on the 5th and 6th of January, and we hadn't necessarily alerted the relevant people. It's suffice to say we actually had a Beach Live alert in place from the 30th of January, and it was still in place up until the 8th of January, 30th of December, sorry, and that was still in place up until the 8th of January, so it would have covered that period. So the warning on impacts on bathing water was already out there, and it hadn't actually been taken down until the 8th of January. The fact that there may have been a spill, it was already covered by the WaterFit Live alert that had been issued on the 30th of December. And again, that would have gone to those people that I just mentioned, Peter Blythe, and your email address, environmentalhealth@eastdevon.gov.uk.
And did you notify them with the second burst as well?
The second burst on the
there was a second. They said we'd not notified EDC that there was a second burst pipe taking place, or to work together to manage the issue. And I think the question for that was, are you confident, because the question's being asked, that you worked as closely with East Devon as you could have done at the time it happened? And is there some lessons to be learned going forward, which needs to be understand that this was a big issue for people in Exmouth?
Yeah, I am confident that we have worked really hard, particularly with the town council at Exmouth. We had an online Exmouth community meeting. Hazel actually attended an Exmouth town council meeting last week, I believe. We've also got plans to go to Exmouth in a couple of weeks' time to do a community roadshow to have some of these conversations. So there's significant conversations that we're having with Exmouth. I also met with Councillor Young and one of his colleagues at Sidmouth at a recent meeting where we discussed some issues as well. So yeah, there are lots of conversations going. I think for me it's about understanding exactly what we're aiming for and how do we get there. But there have been a significant number of conversations that have been happening.
Okay, so I know this. I'm sure the Exmouth people will have some comments here. And can I open up to any members who wish to comment or to say anything to Alan? Have we got anybody? Anita?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Councillor Mackinder.
Councillor Mackinder.
It's along the same lines as my previous comment about building a resilient system. And I note that you said that there was an ongoing Water Live event from December. So that covered the period about that this question relates to. But when you have an ongoing event like that, and say in December, the relevant people were away on vacation or whatever that might be, to then come back in a few days later and not know that this event was ongoing puts them at a disadvantage. So when you have an ongoing incident, possibly some way of re-notifying, at least daily, to say, yes, this is still ongoing. You haven't missed the phasing out of this incident or whatever you call it, turning it off. Just to let you know, it's still ongoing from this date. This is what we're doing to work on it, so that everybody is aware it's still a thing they need to be taking account of in their work. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I will say and I'm going to be brutal here, that's an issue for East Devon to manage, not for us to understand when people are on leave in your organisation. Equally, I think there needs to be a robust communication and handover process in East Devon. So, but thank you very much, Councillor.
Well, perhaps those sort of things can be discussed when you meet up with the team, hopefully not in the very, very near future. Have we got anything else?
Councillor Young.
Councillor Young.
Yeah, we've identified that there were some failures over the holiday period because a lot of normal people from the EA, normal people from Southwest Water and ourselves were on holiday, or
right.
So we need to work on that, of how to overcome having Christmas.
Yes, it's part of the business contingency, that what does happen during those key times, because rest assured, key things do happen on key dates that you're not expecting it. If we got anybody else who would like to contribute?
Yes, Chair, Matt Blythe to come back.
Matt, would you like to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the critical thing that has kind of been lost, which I think Councillor Mackinder kind of alluded to, is that the original notification came in on the 30th, but there was an additional break on the 5th and the 6th. So there was a change in the situation. It's that subtlety that gets lost. So whilst it might still come under the same notification, you don't get the kind of up-to-date information that potentially you need. Certainly Peter Blythe needs to look at how to deal with the management of the beach. And whilst I appreciate that might legally meet the requirements in terms of the notification, it maybe would be helpful to have better information flow about what's going on within the specific notification.
Did you want to come back on that, Alan?
No, let's listen to the feedback, I think, and we
Okay.
could
Right,
we
go
can
on
go.
to-
But it's no doubt we probably could have provided some different updates. But you know, these are the lessons learned that we need to go through in any instant review.
And I think, and that's absolutely the point. I think many members here will say, sometimes mistakes happen. Some things we can do better, and if we can learn from them and not make the same mistakes again, then it will benefit everybody. So thank you for that. So we move on to the next one.
Chair, you've got Councillor Barlow and Councillor Arnott with their hands up.
Oh, right.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to basically say what you've said. I don't want to repeat it, but again, Alan, this is just getting things better. You know, we're not trying to throw bricks at you or anything like that. All we want to do is improve this so that you can say that you're making a better effort. And you can sit there and say, we're doing what we've legally got to do, but people are going to just keep chucking bricks at you. So it would be much better if you could just literally say, look, here it is. This, you know, we've got a problem. Here it is. And keep saying it, because it just takes one text. You've got enough people that work in your office to just say, this is for East Devon. Just send them a text every day. Send it every bloody hour if you have to, because it's just going to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for my extraordinary purple background. I'm in a Premier Inn in Dublin. Chair, can I just respectfully suggest a lot of what we're discussing at the moment is micro detail operational matters, which really should be discussed in the meeting that has been expressed so far. I think what we need to be able to do as members to make this meeting worthwhile is to be able to challenge as members South West Water in a courteous way, not sort of Pollyanna-ish statements about how things are going to be. But if I can suggest it, I think we need to whip through the agenda if we can and not get hooked up on, you know, which leak happened on which day. Those are key questions. But actually what we're looking for here is to understand our strategic relationship moving forward. In particular, I would refer you, Chair, to I think the final question, question 12, which is about South West Water, us and planning. That is a huge global issue. And I do worry if we spend the next hour talking about, you know, one tanker moving around one part of Exmouth and whatever, just respectfully, you know, that stuff I think is, as I said, operational, and we need to take that offline and move it forward there. Thank you.
So thank you for that. Alan, looking at the questions, are there some quick answers you can skirt over so we do get to some of those issues of you know, looking at the strategy side of it, which is key?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I in conversation with Sarah, we agreed we'll go through the questions and answers, but that's fine. Thank you, Councillor, and I totally agree. And I think let's commit to a post-instant review jointly, and let's see what we can learn from it. That's the action I think we need to take away, and the relevant roles and responsibilities, rather than explain what each other didn't do. Let's try and work out what each other can do better when we get together. So we'll commit to that. Check, that helps.
And so looking at the questions, though, there are some real quite meaty questions there. Are there any specific ones, you know, especially when you said you're going to provide a report, are there any specific ones that you would like to explain?
I will cover question 3 very briefly. We in terms of instant reports, we get lots of reports of instance. In a lot of instances, we don't get sufficient information like a photograph. So if we get a photograph of what people see, it helps us understand what they saw at the time, because whilst our response time is very good, and in this particular instance, we responded within just over an hour to this particular instance, we didn't see what the member of the public saw, and therefore we can neither confirm nor otherwise what actually happened at that incident. If we get that information, Hazel and her team can take those photographs and use it as part of our hydraulic modelling. So that's a response back to that one, but we have notified that. We have got that as an instant there.
Okay.
I think there are lots of questions around what we're doing in Exmouth. There's a couple of questions on 4, and 5, and I think it's important that we give Hazel the opportunity just to explain some of the things we're doing. Some of this will be repeated because we've already gone through it on our Exmouth Online event, and we will be producing a Q&A from it. So it will be a repeat of what you will receive or what you may have already heard in other places, but appreciate that this is an East Devon District Council meeting, not an Exmouth Town Council meeting. So Hazel, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, sure. So the first question here is about the burst at Fear Park, and whether that was because the pumps had been uprated at the pump station. They had been uprated in September 2022. This is part of our strategy to improve spill performance in the Exmouth catchment. So the pumps pump more up to the treatment works. We did obviously do a check on what this does to the rising main and the increased pressure. The pressure at that part of the rising main is only about 2.3 bar. The increase in pump rate took it up a fraction of that, because it's near the discharge point at the treatment works, so it's not a massive pressure. The first bit of the rising main's already been replaced and rehabbed, and that was the bit that was seeing the higher pressures. That job was done some years ago. So really the risk of it bursting was not increased by the increased pump rate. The actual defect that was found that caused the burst was pitting in the bottom of the pipe. The bottom of the pipe had been worn out. So it was not a pressure related failure. So I think that answers question 4. Question 5 is about the combined sewer system and is it at capacity? Why are we seeing more spills? I don't believe we're seeing any more spills if you take averages over the years and considering accuracy of data. We do the hydraulic modelling to look at what the sort of average spill is across normally a 10 or 12 year period. At capacity is a bit of an odd question because obviously the overflows relieve the capacity. Capacity could also be thought to be the treatment works capacity. We are talking about, you might have heard me say that we are planning on uprating Mare Lane, the Exmouth treatment works treatment. We want to double its treatment capacity. That's not because it can't treat the current foul flows that it's receiving. It treats the foul flows it's receiving in dry weather. We meet our final effluent parameters. That process is all good. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason that we are wanting to double its capacity is so that we can treat some of these storm flows and reduce the amount of spills that we're seeing. So in dry weather, the sewerage system is operating fine. In wet weather and storm events, that's when we see the spills. Where we see development occurring, we will look to offset the additional foul flows that we receive from that development by removing surface water from the system. We've just completed we've completed one of our surface water separation schemes up at Seymour Avenue and Featherbed Lane. We've got another smaller one happening at Denning Court. So we're constantly looking at where we can remove those non-foul flows from the combined sewer. So I think when we deliver our Exmouth scheme, we've delivered the Fear Park part of it. We've got an upgrade to do at Mare Road pumping station. We can't do that until we've increased the sewage treatment works out full capacity. We've got to pump it up to the treatment works. It's all got to be able to get out the other end. So at the moment, we've got the drilling rig down at Sandy Bay, which is drilling the new outfall out to the sea. I don't know if some of you have seen that. There's also a pipe strung across the fields. That pipe is going to be pushed into the hole that they've drilled out into the sea. I'm told that's going to be next week, because I'm hoping to get down there to see that. And that will form our new increased outfall capacity from the treatment works, which forms part of the overall scheme.
Chair, you've got a hand from Councillor Howe.
Thank you. And thank you for that update. But I need to just come back and challenge you on one thing, and it is to do with planning as well. My ward encompasses Cliff St Mary, so we've got Blue Ball pumping station in it and Cliff St Mary pumping station in it. We have in the last year, 12 months, had 6 hydraulic overloads, according to your engineers, in our village, which is where sewage, raw sewage, flows down the streets. You know, not seen since the Elizabethan times. 6 in a year, 4 of which were due to flood weather or bad weather, storm weather. The other 2 aren't. They were on clear, bright days, no rain for 24 hours plus, but we had flooding behind the flood zone, which is why the EA is so concerned about your capacity to deal with it. And it's that question, we as residents in particular, and as councillors, and it'll come on later as well, so I'm happy to pause this, do not believe the statistics and the words you're saying a lot. Don't get me wrong, I know you are working hard at it, but there are factual inaccuracies in what you're saying and how you're acting sometimes. And it is worrying and a great concern with what's going on. I'll leave it at that, and hopefully we'll pick it up with the planning bit later, because it relates to a response you, South West Water, put into a planning application as well. But as I say, I needed to point out the discrepancies, I suppose is the best way to put it, between facts on the ground and what you're saying, which probably covers 95% of what's going on, but not all 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think we will go on to discuss planning, which is one of the questions. And I think it's something many members have mentioned to me about the issues of planning, but let's cover that separately. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up at this stage? And I'm very mindful, I don't want to spend too much time on the details. Is there anything anybody desperately wants to say at this stage before we move on?
Chair, you had Councillor Young, who I can't tell if he just took his hand down. Did you take it down? Yep, he took his hand down. And Councillor Heath.
Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Chair. Just to raise with you, Alan, on the 12th of July, I'm the District Councillor for B and Branscombe, and the beach manager reported that there was an uncontrolled spill from the Bunce Lane SPS, which came out on the beach at Seaton Hull. Now, to cut a long story short, what he reported was that it took you guys 6 hours to report this to the Environmental Agency, and it was coming out of 50 litres per, I'm just trying to read this actually, it was 50 litres per minute or second or something. But I just wondered why it took you guys 6 hours to report that to the Environmental Agency, and if that process can be somehow, speeded up so that you get this information to the Environment Agency, then they get it to EDDC, and then he's not running around, 6 hours later trying to sort out the problem.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think it's appropriate to go through individual incidents. Suffice to say, we do have a service level that we work towards, and there may be times where we don't achieve that, and we always look into that, Councillor Heath. And if there was an issue with the way that we triaged it, or we didn't receive the information in the right way, or we didn't deal with it, we always look at that, and the Environment Agency do hold us to account on that, and we do, in a number of instances, have to explain why there has been a delay. So I don't think it's fair to go through that individual one, but it is noted, and do accept that there are times where we don't report as quickly as we would like.
And I think the points that Councillor Howe made just now, I think they can be picked up at a later date, but we will talk about planning in a minute. So would you like to move on quickly now, Alan, to the next batch of questions?
Apologies, I'm on mute. So I noticed there are a couple of hands. So I'm going to carry on, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah.
With you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a couple of questions around water fit, and are we really committed to achieving our water fit targets of an average of 20 spills across all CSOs and an average of 10 for those on bathing waters? Yes, we are absolutely committed to that, and that is what our water fit strategy is for, and that's what we're planning to achieve. Suffice to say, 2023 was a wetter than average year. I think the Met Office have actually said it was the 6th wettest year on record for Devon, so it was an incredibly wet year. And going back to what Hazel was saying just now about the impacts of weather and surface water on our systems, if we can get to the point where we can remove all of that going into our system, then we will be able to manage the storm overflows much better. So there's 3 things we can do. Stop it getting in the first place. If we can't do that, we will build a bigger tank in order to manage that. And the third thing we are doing, which can also cause those spills to operate, is working with others to reduce blockages on our system, which do cause CSOs to spill unexpectedly due to fats, oils and greases, plastics, anything that isn't pee, poo and paper that's put down the toilet. And we are working very closely with government on their banning of flushable wet wipes because they cause a significant impact not only on our sewage system, but all other water and sewage companies' sewage system.
Okay. Do you want to go on a couple of, so what I intend to do is if you can cover, say, 8, 9, and perhaps 10, because they're all very similar, and then we'll take some questions after that. I think that will speed the process up.
Yeah. Okay.
You have given some answers, so I don't think we need to go into repeating that, but if there's anything new or to summarize those would be very useful.
Of course I can. So one of the questions is, what does it actually mean putting our EDM into maintenance? Well, it's exactly what it means. We have to maintain our monitors. They don't sit in the system for 20 years without any maintenance. We need to go in because we need to maintain the accuracy of them. Sometimes we need to replace them. But there are other times when telecommunications go down. There are other times when things other than poo and paper wrap around the sensor and we have to take those off. But the Environment Agency do give us a target of making sure that our EDMs are operable for greater than 90% of the time. And where they're not, we have to explain why that might not be the case. And I'm hoping my colleague Mark Worsfold's on here as well, but I think Ofwat are also considering the operability aspects of EDMs as well, which we will need to potentially consider going forward. Is that correct, Mark? You're on mute.
Yeah, yeah, I'll just check you can hear me. Yes, that's correct, Alan. We're actually trying to target 98% operability, even though the permit requirement is only 90%. Ofwat are putting incentives in place for the next price review where if we are falling below 100% actually, then we will see penalties. So we're driving very hard to try and achieve that target. At the moment, we are achieving 98% in the recent months, but we're really focused on how do we keep those EDMs operable all the time so that they can continue to provide meaningful and transparent information to the general public generally. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. And just to reiterate as well, just because it's in maintenance doesn't actually mean that we're not collecting the data. We might find we do that because we're not sure whether or not the data is an accurate reflection. We wouldn't want to put that data out if it wasn't correct. So it may well still be collecting that information. It's just put in maintenance so that we can clarify whether or not it's operating correctly or not. The next question is the age-old question around is it sewage, is it not sewage in your storm overflows? I mean, it's suffice to say, in a majority of instances, 98% of what comes out of storm overflows is water. However, I think it's true to say that we don't know everything that's coming out of the storm overflow, and we are in very, very, very early talks with Exeter University as part of our partnership called CREW, which is Centre for Resilience into the Environment, Waste and Water, to try and characterise what a storm overflow may or may not contain. Because at the moment we all talk about sewage, don't we? But there may be other things in there that we're not currently aware of that we need to be aware of. That's at very early stages, Chair. It's not a promise that that's going to happen, but we're in conversations with the university to see whether or not that's something we can achieve in order to understand that. I think it's also important to say that all of our storm overflows under the permit should have screening on. So those screens should remove the majority of the solids as well. And there's also a requirement under the permit that we manage the aesthetics as well. So the visual impact of storm overflows operating. And again, in most instances, they are operating under heavy weather, heavy rainfall. And I know East Devon very well, nice, beautiful Devon red soils. And when it rains, a lot of the rivers in East Devon look like Devon red soil. So there's other things also to consider as well in terms of impact on the environment.
Take the
next one is on,
as well.
Explain the question on E. coli. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Take question 10, then we're paused then, and then I'll let members come in and ask you questions.
So yeah, I'm going to park the answer to that question because question 10 is all about the data that the Environment Agency is collecting, and they're collecting it to test two things. Firstly, can they physically take a sample during the winter period, and is it safe to do so? Because the way in which the sample's taken for bathing water means that they've got to walk out in a stormy condition. They've got to walk out to a depth of a metre and then put the bottle 60 centimetres under the surface. And there will be times where it's inherently dangerous for the Environment Agency to take a sample. So that's the first thing they're going to test. If they do take a sample, it'll enable us to characterise what that bathing water looks like generally across the winter period or out of the season. And we've agreed with the Environment Agency that when they've collected that data, we'll collect other information on hydrology, catchment characteristics, whether or not our storm overflow was operating or not operating. But it's suffice to say, E. coli and IE doesn't just come from sewage, there are other sources. So just because you see E. coli doesn't mean it's sewage related. In fact, there are places where we have no assets where we pick up E. coli and IE because they come from other sources. So I'm going to park that question. It's too early to answer that, and it'll be foolish for me to do that until we've done some proper analysis. Okay,
well, thank you so far. Now, can I offer it back to members now? And I'll ask Anita, who, what I suggest would be easier for Anita to call your name out because she's got control of this, and then that'll be easier than me suggesting the next person. So Anita, over to you.
Councillor Davey, Chair.
Thanks, Anita, and thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was interested in what you were saying about surface water separation, because that seems to me to be the core of your problem, isn't it? It's the combined sewers that overflow at times of storm events particularly, although bearing in mind what Councillor Howe said, maybe not always. But certainly here in Exmouth, the majority of issues happen there. You mentioned that 2023 was an exceptional year. I don't think it'll be considered exceptional in the future. So I think we've got to start future-proofing and planning for this. I'm interested in how you managed to do this separation. I'm quite close to Featherbed Lane that you mentioned just now. How you achieve that separation? How easy is it to do? How suitable would it be to trial in other locations, and how many of those do you think there might be? I'm interested in whether this is a bit of a one-off or whether it potentially could be rolled out in a huge number of areas. I've also wanted to ask if you've considered a grant scheme to enable homes to install rainwater harvesting, which would also lessen the amount of surface water. Obviously, those would be older homes where surface water runoff is draining into the sewers. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to my colleague Hazel to answer those questions. Councillor Davey on surface water separation. Hazel?
Yeah, I'll start off and then I can pass on to Mark as well to talk about the longer term strategies. So in the Featherbed Lane and Seymour Road areas, the road gullies were connected to our combined system. So if you think of all the road area and then all the pavement and any drive that might be connected to that's the extent of the surface area that was coming into our system. So we have laid new surface water sewers. You might want to call them highway sewers, but highways probably wouldn't take on ownership of those. So we would retain the ownership of those to pick up the highways gullies. So they'd be diverted into the surface water system. And into the existing surface water system that's already in place there. Generally, when we look for surface water separation options, we would look for road. That's the most cost-efficient way of doing it. We did look at about 12 or 13 different areas throughout Exmouth, and we threw some high-level costs at them to see which ones were going to be the most cost-beneficial. And that's when we pulled off the areas that we did. We ran our hydraulic models with all of those areas removed, and we still didn't achieve the spill targets we needed to. The problem in Exmouth is that we need to pass forward more flow to the treatment works and eventually treat more. So that is our strategic plan. In some other areas, there are other towns, there are some great opportunities. We're currently looking at surface water separation in the Sidmouth area. The big car park that's right next to the Ham there, all of that car park drains into our combined system, which I just think is mad because the sea and the river is right next door. So we're looking at some surface water separation of those road areas throughout the town. and there are other opportunities within Sidmouth as well. Just moving on to some of the other areas that you were interested in. So Budley, we've got an historical impermeable area survey. So that's got, and Sidmouth, so it's got all the roads and buildings coloured different colours dependent on where they drain. They are quite old surveys, but it doesn't really change. So we at least base our initial options on that. There are areas where we don't have impermeable area surveys, so I can't think of Beer and Seaton whether we do actually. If we don't, we're doing a massive drive at the moment to get that impermeable area information, so we can start to make some of these decisions about where we can do significant surface water separation schemes. We're also looking at Budley. There's some areas there as well. Now, when you separated those areas, that's when you can start introducing the SUDs as well. So whether you want to store it, whether you want to treat it, whether you want to do some green solutions. So if I hand over to Mark, he can talk a bit more about that and perhaps some sort of more household type solutions.
Yeah, so Hazel's covered a lot there about some of the specifics we're doing in areas. But one of the things we are looking at for all opportunities is where can we separate out now. There's kind of two populations of properties in there. There are those that have been constructed since about the mid-70s, where surface water is already separated and they join at the last manhole on the estate. One of the things we've been doing and quite a lot with the surface water separation is joining up the dots between all these new developments that have occurred, and therefore removing that surface water out and giving it a new pathway. If we're going into where it's already a combined sewer, that's where the costs get very high, because all of the local drains in and around the property would need to be replaced, and that's where the costs rise up quite substantially. So we're a bit reluctant to go into that space, but we are piloting it in a few areas. But generally the costs are quite high in that space. But that is where the discussion you were having about putting in. And we've been looking at some kind of intelligent water butts that basically store water for about half of the volume in the water butt. The other half is then available for gardening and watering. And we're really looking at those. We've done a few pilots around that, and they've also been quite good because they reduce your per capita consumption because people aren't using mains water to water their garden anymore. They're using that water butt. So we think there's a great deal of opportunity there, and we are exploring those. And the kind of dispersed storage across multiple properties would then provide some of the equivalents of some of the large grey-based concrete tanks that we've been looking at as well. So there are lots of different options and avenues to explore.
Okay, next one?
Councillor Young.
Thank you for that explanation on surface water. Seeing that we are getting a lot more rain now, as you said, last year was some records. We're dealing with a lot of flood issues in East Devon, and I do sympathise with you that you've inherited a system that takes surface water. If only we hadn't done that in the first place, but we can't turn back that. Just linking up the comments made earlier about Exmouth, and also going into the realms of planning. In 2010, we did a report, or Exeter, Timbridge and ourselves had a report done, a water study report. In that, it says that Exmouth was over capacity at that time. This is 2010, remember, of 2,500 houses. So we had a shortfall of capacity in Exmouth then. And the other issue was Countess Weir capacity. It said that it had enough capacity, but then they did say that Cranbrook would have its own sewage system. Unfortunately, that didn't go ahead. And we all know that round Exminster and Exeter and East Devon has expanded dramatically. We must be getting at capacity at Countess Weir now. So I wonder why, what You seem to be doing a lot of work at Exmouth now, but that seems to be now. If we're with 2,500 houses, dwellings too much in 2010, what work was done between then and now, and how come we're doing all this work now? And also, at Countess Weir, we must be getting to near capacity. So I'd like a couple of questions and answers on that, please.
Thank you. Alan?
Okay, let me take this one. We've been looking at capacity levels as part of our drainage and wastewater management plans, which are now becoming a statutory requirement for all water companies, and we've been using that to engage with all the lead local flood authorities about the demands on the systems. If you look at the Exeter one, what you will see there is we've identified that there is going to be a future capacity issue at Countess Weir, and we